Just a quick introduction. So I'm Tom Lynch. I'm commodity manager. I work out of our Eastern Ontario office for Ingredion Canada Corporation. I've been with Ingredion since 2016. I studied economics as a background. I grew up on a small beef farm, and I'm happy to be joining you to speak a bit about our company, and happy to take questions along the way or after, and feel free to reach out, send me an email later if something comes to mind. I'm happy to talk about our company or kind of career journeys and that sort of thing. So my role at Ingredion is to purchase corn for the facility. I call in trades to our hedge desk, offset purchases in future production months. I oversee corn logistics at the Cardinal plant, and then I can also back up purchasing and logistics at our London facility. So I also look after our direct IP sourcing program, where we're contracting non-GMO corn directly with growers, and then we're asking them to follow some program rules, and then we pay a premium to keep that crop segregated and below an industry-specific cutoff or specification. And then it ends up being an IP program that we can sell starches and sweeteners and other food ingredients into the food market. So just to talk about where we're going today in terms of slides and what I'm hoping to run across with you is I want to introduce Ingredion as a global ingredient supplier. And then before I do that, I should mention, in case there's anyone that's familiar with the previous names, so the name Ingredion was formed in 2012. It was a rebranding after Corn Products International, or as we operated in Canada, Casco acquired National Starch. So these were two large corn wet milling companies that were publicly traded, and they merged into one publicly traded company. So then I'll dive into the Canadian business, talk a bit more about raw materials and the products we make out of corn to supply the Canadian food, brewing, animal, and industrial industries. And then I'll lay out some business impacts with regards to corn quality and kind of how risk management intersects there as well.
So that's the place I sell my corn to, that you can't see, but you can. It's
okay.
You can.
So Ingredion is a leading global ingredient solution provider, and we turn grains, fruits, vegetables, and other plant-based materials into a value-added ingredient solution for food, beverage, animal nutrition, brewing, and industrial markets. So we don't necessarily have brand recognition. We're selling bulk ingredients into the food industry. So we're one step removed from the customer, and then you're not going to see that ingredient label on the shelf. However, we make many of the specific ingredients that go into many different products, consumer packaged products that are on the shelf. On the other end, from raw material sourcing, it's very often that growers will sell their corn to their local elevator or possibly a broker, and we might not have that brand recognition with growers either. So in terms of, if I was to ask who do you sell your corn to or your raw materials, a lot of growers may not necessarily know Ingredion as an end user, or they don't know what ingredients products end up in. So in terms of sales, 54% of our products go into the food industry. 21% go into industrial applications such as paper, packaging, pharmaceuticals, personal care. 15% goes into beverages and the brewing industry. 10% goes into animal nutrition. We're a publicly traded company, headquartered outside of Chicago. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. We have 12,000 employees. We have 18,000 customers in different countries. Oh, excellent. Good to hear. A farmer delivering corn to London. Perfect. And then something we pride ourselves in is having specific ingredients to compete in certain markets. So in the center of this slide, it says 70% of 2023 global new product launches contain ingredients that Ingredion produces. So ideally, we have a wide variety of ingredients that we can compete in different industries, and just we can outcompete other avenues in the sense that we have regional manufacturing, We have an ability to be efficient with cost of production and then transportation as well. So we want to co-create with customers. We want to be involved in the food chain to essentially collaborate and make ingredient solutions that work for everyone, whether it's sweetness, texture, mouthfeel, or specific food applications that customers are looking for. From a geographical distribution, we're heavily weighted in North America. So this is 2023 full year sales. 2024, we're right around $8 billion. But the segment is still about the same. They're just not released yet for 2024, but almost $5 billion in sales in North America. So it's by far our largest market. In South America, it's 1.1 billion. In Asia Pacific, 1.1 billion. So very, very similar sized markets. With that, in terms of demographics and younger people, there are more younger people in South America versus North America, so we do suspect that there is more growth to come out of the South American market. And then last but not least, we kind of lump together a very big geographical region in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. It's still a big segment of our business, but just not as large as the others, at about 780 million. Okay. So diving into our manufacturing facilities. So this is a map of North America with all our manufacturing. So there's corn, potatoes, peas, fruit concentrates, and gum arabic. And then I want to dive into the corn specific because that's what we're running in London and Cardinal.
We're here in London.
So I've circled in red the London Cardinal plants. And then in the US, we have 5 plants. 4 of them are in the Midwest. So we have our Argo plant is our largest outside of Chicago. North Kansas City and Indianapolis are both non-GMO plants, and they came over from the National Starch side. So they're more starch focused in their sales. And then Cedar Rapids in the Western Corn Belt, and then Winston-Salem, North Carolina on the East Coast. So you can see that we're set up as a network of plants that we can back each other up. We can compete for business depending on product makeup or logistics costs. And then in Mexico, we have San Juan del Rio, Guadalajara, and Mexico City. So those are all sweetener-based plants. And with Guadalajara running on and off of doing non-GMO or IP corn. So as mentioned before, in 2012, October 2012, historically we had different umbrellas for different countries. And once the real reason was that National Starch and Corn Products International were formed together and trying to create more synergies and running under the same umbrella with sales going out to customers. There was a rebranding effort, and they took all of these specific brands and brought them under one unified approach, which was Ingredion. And a bit of that is reducing shareholder confusion and trying to understand the different business segments. But that's where the name Ingredion, which was a play on ingredients, came from. Then I'll dive into the Canadian corn plants. So we have plants both in London. Sorry, that was Matt. I understand that now, Matt. You sent a message to say that you deliver corn. Carol had mentioned that. Carol Wilson's a buyer in London to me previously. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that. So Carol purchases the corn at our London, Ontario plant, which is just south of the city of London. So the daily grind consumes about 450 acres of corn every day. It employs 125 people. The plant first opened in 1980. While I got that map up there, you can see from a foods from a logistics standpoint, we're in the heart of Ontario's corn production, in the center of southwestern Ontario. And then additionally, you've got a lot of urban centers that London can ship to. So there's a lot of food manufacturing between, Detroit, Hamilton, Toronto, Buffalo, that is a very quick drive to send some bulk ingredients. On the other end of the province, the plant that I'm located at is in Cardinal, a very, very small town on the St. Lawrence River. We're about an hour south of Ottawa, almost directly between Toronto and Montreal. It's a bit of a smaller plant. It uses 300 acres of corn every day, employs 150 people. And the plant first began operations in 1858, so it actually predates Canadian Confederation. So before Canada was officially a country. And I don't have a colorful example for London, but I do of Cardinal, just to understand the logistics and the implications for just-in-time manufacturing, where you are short on tank space, relying on trucks to deliver every single day. Our plant runs, all of our plants run 24/7, 365 days of the year, unless there's some major maintenance that would take us down. But a daily perspective in terms of truck flow and logistics, we at the Cardinal plant, and again, that's a smaller plant than London, we typically take 40 truckloads of corn in every day. And then from those 40 truckloads of corn, they would ship out 12 truckloads of starch, 30 truckloads of sweetener, and then about 8 rail cars of sweeteners as well, 1 truckload of refined corn oil, 6 truckloads of 19% protein feed to feed into the animal nutrition industry, and then 1 truckload of 60% protein, that'd be gluten meal, and typically that would end up in animal nutrition or possibly pet food. So those 48 truckloads of corn coming in per day, there's different moistures of the products going out, but you've got and sizes of trucks, but you've got between 50 and 60 trucks just coming from that. And so to magnify that, the London plant is about 1.2, 1.3 times bigger. Our Argo plant is about 5 times the size of the Cardinal plant. So there's a lot of implications and logistics, for breakdowns, and it's very complicated, and I think overall the plant staff does a great job of keeping things running and organized. Absolutely. So diving into corn acres. This is a depiction of the darker the green, the more corn acres are grown, and you can see, as previously mentioned, the London plant is in the left there in red. There's a great concentration of corn acres. This is an AgriCorps map of insured acres, which not all corn acres are insured, but it can give us a proxy for density of corn production. So Canada overall has 3.6 million acres of corn that are grown each year. Ontario accounts for a great majority of that, in 2 to 2.1 million acres per year. In the London specific dry area or southwestern Ontario, it's about 1.5 million acres of corn. And then at the Cardinal plant in the eastern Ontario area is about 500,000 acres of corn every year. So we're talking about corn and ingredients, and I kind of want to dive into, what products are we making, or how are we making them? So the next few slides are kind of going to get into what is in a bushel of corn. So from a bushel of corn, 1 bushel will weigh 56 pounds typically. This year's a bit more with Mother Nature and the beautiful open fall we had this year. But some years it could be a bit less, and maybe something Matt has talked about, I'm not sure, is if you were affected by disease such as tar spot and that corn plant shut down early, it's possible your test weight's a lot lower, and that 1 bushel of corn is a volume measurement, is less weight. But from your average 56 pounds is 1 bushel, and then from that The great majority that you're pulling out of that is starch. So 35 pounds of that bushel is starch. Next would be fiber. It's about 10 pounds. Then it would be water. This is dried corn down to about 15.5%. So the water would represent 6 pounds. The germ would be 3 pounds, and that germ is pressed for oil, and then the spent hull would go back into feed. And lastly would be the protein, which we often call gluten, but I don't want to confuse anyone because it's not the gluten that's associated with wheat. It's more of a historic, a name for the protein that comes from corn. Very, very, deep yellow hue, gets on everything. It's almost like dust, but the smallest amount of the components that are in a kernel of corn would be the protein, and that's at 2 pounds. So this is a great depiction. I really like it, just in terms of what corn wet milling is all about. So dry milling is ethanol production. Wet milling is what we're mainly interested in. The wet milling is able to separate the 4 primary components of the kernel at a higher rate than a dry mill. So I'll get into it in a couple slides, but essentially, we are soaking it, adding acid, and we're able to separate the specific bonds within the kernel and ultimately get a greater degree of separation from the 4 primary components. So you can see the outside. I'll turn my laser on here. So the outside hull or fiber, that's the component number 1 that we want to remove. Number 2 is the germ, which, as mentioned before, is pressed for the corn oil. Next would be the starch. Typically, it's kind of 2 layers. There's easily extracted starch, typically at the top of the kernel, and then at the lower portion of the kernel, or the endosperm, it's very tightly bound starch and gluten molecules, and ideally that steep time and steep acid helps to lift those so that we can get a greater degree of separation than typically what you're seeing in a dry mill. So from that, in terms of where those products are going, so we have our starch-derived head products. So we can take that starch, isolate it, dry it, modify it. We can also further break down those bonds. So we can make, if you think of right from separating, we can make food starch and industrial starch right away. Then we can treat that, and we can make glucose syrups, dextrose, high fructose corn syrup, which there's a few different types, blends. And then any of the, quote unquote co-products or agribusiness products would be the fiber, going into gluten feed, the protein, which would either go into gluten meal or gluten feed, which is mentioned with the fiber, and then germ, which we would press for that corn oil, and the spent germ obviously going back into feed itself. So to take a look at the process, and I think I still have my laser on here. Perfect. Okay, so the quick overview is grain essentially is unloaded at the plant, whether that's into storage or directly into our steep tanks. Our steep tanks typically are about 100. It's 3 truckloads, so 5,000 bushels or 120 metric tons. At both London Cardinal plants, I think. The London plant actually has a bit larger steep tanks, but they're about 3 stories high, and that corn is mixed in there with steep acid, water, and it literally steeps in that tank for 24 to 36 hours, helping to swell that corn up, loosens the bonds within, and then once that steep tank is ready, it will go through a first grinding process where ideally you're going to get full separation. The germ is nicked off, the fiber is opened up, and then step 1 is removing that germ. And a lot of this is cyclones that are using density to remove the specific. Typically, it's the lighter material at every stage. But you would take that slurry mix, run that through a hydrocyclone, and you would get the corn germ, which you would wash, press it, and then dry it. You're going to send the byproduct to the corn germ, and then you're going to refine that oil to get your corn oil, such as the Zola oil or vegetable oil mixes that you see in the grocery store, or just anything that that's deep fried within the food industry. From there, we go through the fiber wash. So we're going to take that outer fiber layer off. It's going to go to the fiber press and then be dried. It's going to be sent. It's one component of the corn gluten feed, which is a 19%. Not to be confused with this guy over here. That's 60% protein. So this is a 19% protein feed. Then next, what we're left with is the starch and the protein, the gluten. So we're going to go through various stages of starch and gluten separation. So we'll go to the gluten. Will be taken to the gluten dryer, and there's that deep yellow color. It's almost like dust. It is reduced down and dried, and it's a great product that. It's used in a lot of poultry applications. My understanding, I don't think the pork industry uses it very much because of specific enzymes that are missing. It's also used in a lot of pet food. And then we'll go back to the starch dryer. So that starch that's separated can come right off the line. It can be dried, turned into cornstarch, and that could be either for industrial applications or it can be for industrial applications or food applications right there. And there are steps further that you can modify that starch so it has specific applications within the food industry. And that's kind of what the national starch arm of our company, they really intensify that process right there. Now for our London Cardinal plants, which are mainly sweetener plants, we would take that starch, and you think of that as a longer chain that is kind of interwoven. We are taking that and we're sending that over to the sweetener refining. So by adding enzymes, heat, and pressure, we are able to refine that starch. And just depending on the amount of enzyme and the amount of time, heat, and pressure that you are applying, we can make specific grades of sweeteners. So you can take something that is not very sweet, extremely viscous. It has lots of applications of mouthfeel or binding, or kind of a nutrient carrier within the food industry, right down to your high fructose corn syrup that is going to be extremely sweet, and a little bit will go a long way in terms of sweetening a product. In Canada, we don't undertake this last step of fermentation, so we can take some of these sweeteners, we can actually ferment them, and you can make some specialty sweeteners that have some different food applications. We have a plant that we ship some sweeteners to in Iowa, and we undertake this, but we currently, we're limited in the bioproducts we make. But it's a great avenue, very similar to the ethanol industry with fermenting starch. And then you can also make CO2, which has bottling and dry ice and other applications. Okay, just a quick example of our London facility in terms of production in one day, and the scope or the span of how much that can reach. So in one day, London can produce enough sweetener that could make 11.5 million cans of soda per day. It could also make 26.6 million packs of gummy bears. Or in terms of from an energy use standpoint or energy creation, the London plant creates with a cogen facility enough power to run 10,000 households, or potentially charge 1,000. It could charge 1,000 Model S electric vehicles. So a considerable amount of energy use goes into processing all this corn and making these food ingredients. Okay, so now switch over to the quality, risk management, implications from that perspective. So this is a picture of London corn grading. It's a busy spot, absolutely. You can see see if my laser's still on here. This is the corn probe. Trucks pull under. They take a representative industry sample. The corn graders, they'll test that corn to make sure it's within our quality specifications, and then determine if the truck can dump or not. So a few things. We are a food plant. We're taking in a raw material. Our plants are held to quality programs for food safety system certification, FSSC 22000, and then also we have quality management systems in place with ISO 9001. Our plants are all kosher and halal compliant, and then some of our plants are non-GMO, do have non-GMO certification from the industry. And then, I'm not sure on everyone's background, but just to kind of give a depiction of what this looks like. How do we deal with vendors and that sort of thing? So at the bottom, what happens is, Ingredion and either a corn producer or elevator or broker, they would have a conversation, email, telephone, text, however it may occur, but corn is purchased for a specific future month. So say we're here in February, Matt, I'm concerned about our coverage in July, so I call up Matt and say, hey Matt, can you sell me a load of corn for July? He says, what are you paying? We agree on a price. So we've got that one load purchased at London for a certain price. Then typically delivery is set up at least 1 week before with logistics. Matt would have his vendor ID or unload number. The truck would arrive at the plant. It would give the plant the certain information that makes sure it's on the schedule. The truck would be graded. It would unload, and then the payment process would commence the following day. So within that grading portion, just above us here, just some considerations, and these are not Ingredion specific. They're more industry wide, but some grain related quality issues that can come up. So the specifications from the Canadian Grain Standard is that there are specific parameters for cracked corn, heat damage, total damage, test weight. But one thing that's unique to Ingredion is the cracked corn for us cannot be steeped. So we need whole kernels to go into our steep tanks. That way all those kernels will absorb that steep acid at the same rate. If we have a lot of cracks in that process, what ends up happening is it starts to separate in that steep water or mill liquor, and what ends up happening is we aren't able to utilize all that starch or gluten or fiber, so it starts to break down, and it ends up affecting our process overall. So we use the same industry standard as everyone else, that anything below 3% in terms of cracks is no discount. Then there are discounts after that, and then it is possible to reject trucks if the fines or the cracked corn is too high per truck. So what we typically do is before we send any corn to our steep tanks, we clean the corn. All that cracked corn goes into a cracked corn silo, and it's sold back out to the feed industry. Number two is a big one we see, especially at harvest, when people are combining corn beans. If the beans aren't totally ready, and you've got supply shortages of corn out there, we are held to not have any allergens in our supply chain. So with incoming corn, the big one would be soybeans for us here in Ontario, but we do have other plants that have issues with nuts and mustard seed as well. Those are known allergens and regulated by the food industry. Next would be heat and total damage. So this can actually alter starch bonds and give an off flavor or off color. So sometimes heat damaged corn can have a deep, a dark hue or almost black at times. And what that actually ends up doing is it will have big effects. Like our starch will start to turn gray. If there was enough concentration of black kernels in that sample, it actually could turn our starch black. So that's a hard one to get over, and I'm not sure if you guys have gotten into this, but proper grain storage, corn bins, keeping corn moving all the time is. And drying it down to the right levels. Those are, but there's environmental conditions that clearly hold us from doing that always. But I guess as an industry, we need to take the right steps to make sure we're not getting into trouble with our crop storage from that standpoint. The last one I'll bring up is vomitoxin and DON. So there are limits to incoming corn levels of DON as it concentrates in our animal feed. So if you brought in 2 or 3 parts per million of DON corn, the DON does not go into our starch or our sweeteners. It would concentrate within the animal feed product. So that 2 parts per million, say in a gluten feed, would come out as maybe 6 to 8. So it would increase by a factor of 2 to 3, depending on crop year or specific things that are going on in the plant that could influence that.
In the grain, and when animals eat it, then they vomit.
I think next is just an overview of our discount schedules, discount schedule, and then our moisture adjustment. So you can see we break down. Ideally, we want number 2 yellow dent corn at our plants in Canada. The crack corn form material below 3.1%, test weight above 65.9 kilograms per hectoliter. Heat damage below 0.3%, total damage below 5.1, and then the vomitoxin in this specific year was less than 3, but that's subject to change year by year depending on what supply is available. And on the right hand side we have our moisture adjustment chart. So while we don't dry corn specifically at the plant, it is more intensive to take samples of the corn that's being transferred into steeps. Wet corn or damp corn even will have a different uptake of steep acid, so we need to sample that consistently, make sure we're applying enough steep acid so that so that those bonds are starting to release. So we follow an industry standard from a moisture adjustment chart that's listed right there. Just a quick dive. I'm not sure if you guys have covered much on DON and corn quality from that perspective, but it's a big one that hurts our industry, and Ingredion is no different. So what is DON or VOM? So it's a mycotoxin that's produced by Gibberella ear mold. It's very more commonly seen in the Great Lakes Basin or the Eastern Corn Belt. The 2018 crop was high DON, had high DON levels. 2023, I would say, was elevated DON levels, and that typically, we see that in Ohio, Northern Ohio, Michigan, Southwestern Ontario. For some reason, in Eastern Ontario, we've been kind of lucky. I haven't had the same. The same level of concern that the industry has had in Southwestern Ontario, but yeah, it's something to do with humidity, heat at the time of silking and pollination. Those are some of the mechanisms, I guess, or critical control points that this mycotoxin can develop and flourish. And it has an industry-wide impact. So there's supply concerns of, quote unquote, good corn that's out there, low DON, and eventually these products are all going to make it back to animal feed. So Don concentrates in our ag products as well as the ethanol industry's ag products. It hurts our feed customers, their feed customers. It challenges relationships with our growers because they want delivery. They can't replace that crop they've grown. And in a year that there's tight supply of low vol corn, it's difficult to go out and procure that to offset your contracts. But then at the same time, from our sales side, they have sold certain specifications of feed out to their customers, and then there's frustrations with their relationships with their customers, and their customers are looking for an assured supply of low vol feed where they're not having to use binders if they are in a case that they can. I would say, industry groups have been great. The Grain Farmers of Ontario and the Ontario Agribusiness Association, they've both led initiatives to kind of understand this problem and find solutions. And I would definitely commend the efforts that they've undertaken. So then to jump into managing price risk, and then ideally is we want to deliver stable earnings growth to our shareholders. So we're making food ingredients out of corn in our instance, but there are other products that are raw materials that are out there that we're procuring, but we're mainly interested in corn. And so corn is priced in two components. So this chart here is a chart of nearby CME futures, or the futures index. But the two components, number one, you would have the futures component, which is actively trading, and then you would have a local basis portion. So this is just specifically looking at the futures index. So we're booking that corn, and then on the other end, our sales group, they're going out and selling starch, sweeteners, oil, and feed products to our customers that we then need to tie back to corn futures. So realizing that your transactions don't always offset, so the day that we are looking to buy corn, you might not be selling that respective amount of starch or sweetener. So we utilize futures markets to book or hedge our corn buying positions against our sales department's contracts and/or volumes. So there's always risk with volatility, and this chart, I think, paints like a great picture of this. So if you look at kind of the last approximately 10 years, there's two very different pictures. On the left-hand side in blue, we've got what probably felt like volatility, but really in hindsight, it was not a lot of volatility. We saw the futures index, again, the basis component is not on this. There was a range of 301 at the low, to 465. That was from July 2014 to December 2020. So a difference of $1.64. And I mean, if you take out some of these highs, it probably does trade in a much more narrow band throughout a great portion of these years. Then insert, post-COVID, we had post-COVID, there was supply shortages of specific ingredients. There was the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Ukraine is a very large exporter of both wheat and corn. So there was concerns that Ukraine would no longer be able to supply the world market of these vital commodities. And what ended up happening was futures markets really ran. So from 2021 to present day, we've seen a low of 360, which was just achieved last August, and a high in April of 2022 of 827. So again, I mean, you could diagnose or kind of narrow down this range, but really, the $4.67 difference is a lot more volatility when we're looking back historically at $1.64 difference. In the left-hand side of this chart. So I mean, we could talk about where we go from here. I think all year long we talked about a huge U.S. crop. It kind of really pushed futures right down. And then lo and behold, in January, the USDA came out with a report and said the U.S. crop was not as big as they thought, and corn demand was stronger with ethanol use in the U.S. and exports being very competitive above the pace that the USDA had projected. And now we're kind of getting into South America starting to plant their second crop, which maybe looks a bit delayed, but it's really too early to say if that's true. But yeah, we appear to be kind of taking off here again. So we'll see where this all goes. I mean, we've got a new administration in the U.S. that could impact commodities as well. And but more locally, I have heard this is likely to be a record export pace out of the province of Quebec. So obviously the seaway's closed right now for us in Ontario and further down the lake system, but Quebec has open waters where they can continue to export this time of year. So they're not waiting for the spring opening of the river. So yeah, just one last slide to kind of get us through. So from corn purchasing improvements, 70% of our corn is typically bought from brokers and elevators out in futures months. The remainder comes directly from growers. We've typically used a Sell Your Corn website where growers can log in with a vendor number and sell directly with us. And we've moved to a new digital service with a company called Bushel. And we now have a phone application and a website for vendors that can give real-time ticket information, contracts, and settlements, which is similar to what our previous Sell Your Corn website offered. But ideally, the nice thing now is you can follow it on your phone, so it's an app. So in addition to what we could do before, you can book corn on there, but you can also set target pricings while the market's open for future months. So hopefully offering a bit of service for growers that may not be happy with today's price, but with some of this market volatility, can pick some prices that are above their cost of production or somewhere that satisfies what they're looking to maintain as a level of income. So with that, I believe that's everything on my side.
Does anybody have any questions for Tom?
Does he think that they'll work towards a more Canadian bioproducts company instead of the American one?
It's an American-based.
But do you think they would consider instead going to a Canadian one?
No problem. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, that's a great question. So proposed tariffs, how do they affect our business? That one is a very tricky one. They have an impact. I would say the lack of clarity is the big hurdle. So if you go back, we have in US, Canada, we have about 7 plants that are mainly looking at corn, and they make specific corn-based ingredients, and we can backfill as a network. So we can sell to a specific location, whether it's say Buffalo or Detroit, which there's some cross-border movement there. So the logical choice may be to ship those out of London or say it was Syracuse out of or northern New York out of Cardinal. There's more of an opportunity from a logistics standpoint to ship those out of Canadian origins, but maybe it ends up with, if it was a 25% tariff, maybe it makes more sense to ship those out of Chicago or potentially Winston-Salem. So I think the first proposed tariffs got pushed back. I really hope they get pushed back again, or maybe some absolute deal is made. But ultimately, it's just it's uncertain, and we don't quite know what exactly will be impacted. But if I was to if I was to kind of say maybe a more optimistic scenario, we know that we operate both in the US and in Canada. There is product that moves from the US into Canada, whether it's ours or our competitors. So people will continue to look to reformulate the products they're making, and possibly it's an advantage. So if we lose some of our business sending product south, possibly we bring back new opportunities in product from the tariffs that Canada would put on the US to kind of reclaim some of that business. That would be on the head product side. On the ag or the feed product side, I think there could be greater challenges there, just in terms of, I think, as we get further away from the Corn Belt, there's less and less feed products competitively that are available. So, our plants are uniquely situated that they can quickly supply US customers, whereas potentially that may not, there may not be that same demand for feed products here in Canada with less and less livestock and animal inventories. So yeah, very tricky to really kind of understand or put your finger on how it will affect our business, but it will affect us if something is to be enacted, and very difficult to kind of put our finger on a percent or an amount, or is it decreasing our grind 3%, 5%, or what have you.
Any last questions for Tom?
How long has he been with the company?
Started in 2016.
Yeah, would we change our model accordingly? Yes, I think there's scenario planning that's going on in different departments. So, I know sales is meeting with supply chain, and then we have what's called demand planning and supply planning. So demand planning would aggregate all of the orders that are coming from customers, and then supply planning would aggregate all the customers coming from orders, whereas demand planning would aggregate the capacities of the plants and product mixes that they can make, and then bring in the logistics group, and they can talk about origins and destinations. So whether it's truck, rail, or it's bag product like van trailers, so they could take advantage of warehousing or moving grind from one plant to another, and so there's some levers that we could change our model. I wouldn't say drastically, but we could adjust it. I think that would be fair to say. And then I've been with Ingredion for a little over 9 years now.
Great.
Perfect. No, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. If there's any follow-up questions or anything I can provide, I'm happy to get back in touch. So that's great.